Just following up on what's just been said there, we do actually still facing a cost of living crisis. There's no end in sight to it. And everybody is aware, ordinary people out there are very aware that the wholesale price of gas and electricity has dropped significantly, but it's not being passed on to them. And so I think we need to be thinking, and the government need to be thinking, and it should come from this committee to say to them, they have to be thinking very clearly about extending the moratorium and about not cutting back on the supports that they're giving and trying to do something about the level of profiteering and profit gouging. But I do want to ask about the figures, because when you look at the figures on the percentage of customers in arrears, you can see that the percentage of customers in arrears on domestic electricity has come down slightly, but it's rocketed in domestic gas. 20% of all customers are in arrears for domestic gas. That's shocking. And there needs to be real attention paid to that, particularly when, I'll just repeat, the level of profits that are being made by all the gas companies out there and people are struggling. And I want to ask you then about, can you address the question, you've gone through it a bit there about disconnections coming down, but your table there doesn't really show that. It shows non-payment disconnections in 2021 for electricity 648, in 2022 2,031. That's a 300% increase year on year, and we had a moratorium in 2022. And we also had subsidies given out. So there needs some explanation on that. And also on domestic gas, 100% increase from 2021 to 2022. So if you could give me some sort of quick answers on that. I have a couple of more questions to ask. In particular, maybe I'll just ask it now and somebody can go back to me. In September, I asked a question around the information you gave us on the data centres to be connected. The committee then later on wrote to you and asked you to answer the question. It still hasn't been answered. And the question specifically says that there are 8 data, one of your replies said there are 8 data centres at TSO level and 8 at DSO level which have connection agreements that are not yet connected. What I wanted to know was, are they the same 8? Or does that mean there's 16? And how does that, if there's due for connection, how does that impact on the estimate that EirGrid gave us of the expected power demand from data centres? Excuse me, my voice couldn't. So there's the questions on arrears and the moratorium and your figures here, and then the data centres separately, please.
I'll take those separately. Just to say, Deputy Smith, look, we do understand that there is real challenge, real difficulty, real fear, I imagine, in many households at the moment over particularly the gas bills that people are getting in the doors after, the high winter consumption months. We think the electricity credit has helped on the electricity side, and you can see that in the numbers. There's no equivalent on the gas side, and you can also see that in the numbers. So there's numbers are increasing. For whatever reason, there has traditionally been higher levels of debt carried by domestic customers in gas than in electricity. It can be due to the seasonal nature of bills, so people might get really high bills in the winter and pay off some of them and then catch up, if you like, over the summer. And I think we're seeing that, but probably the additional impact of the higher prices as well. And from our point of view, the key here is for customers to be aware of their rights, be aware of, let's say, the government's campaign around reduce your use and the measures that have been put in place to support people who are struggling to pay bills, and we understand there are a lot of them out there. In terms of the stats on disconnections and customers in debt, I might hand over to Karen Trant, and then we'll come back to the data centre point. So, thanks.
Yeah, so just really your first point around extending the protections and the moratorium, absolutely, we'll review that, and we're continuing to get stats in from the suppliers. We would hope to extend those protections if needed over the coming winter as well. The piece on the disconnections, I suppose, look, what we're looking at there in 2020, 991 on domestic electricity, and 2021 is really an artificial baseline, because you would have COVID and there was nobody going out to disconnect, physically going out to disconnect customers because you couldn't get access to people's properties, and they weren't allowed to do that. So that wasn't necessarily the moratorium, that was COVID and operational issues as well. So I think that the sort of the closer baseline is probably the one above it, which is the 4,000 and the 3,000, which is 2018 and 2019. That sort of period there is COVID, and then we're into 2022. So look, we'll continue to monitor that. No one wants disconnections, and not even suppliers. There's a process there. But in some circumstances, and I say some circumstances, it really is the only tool that suppliers have. And maybe by way of example, if you move into a new property and you don't sign up for a supplier, you're still getting electricity, but you're not signed up to pay that bill. So what happens is then the threat, it's not ideal, but the threat of disconnection can sometimes prompt people to look for a supplier, and then they sign up.
But these figures are on non-payment, not on not signing up.
Well, it depends on what way they calculate them. They would, de facto, that would be non-payment of an account. If you're using electricity, you don't have a supplier and you're not paying, that would be non-payment of account.
Well, my experience and my guess is that most of these people are poor and can't pay their bills, and they're being cut off. And it begs the question, does anyone follow up what happens to them after that? You know, if they're without power, without gas, without electricity, without the money to be able to reconnect, you know, what's going on here? This is just so wrong in the middle of a cost of living crisis when the profits are soaring, that you allow this happen.
I think, look, we engage with the NGOs, the likes of MABS and St Vincent de Paul, and we work closely with them to understand those that are at risk, because generally they're well, in the main, they're probably struggling in other areas financially. So do they need sort of help beyond the energy piece that they're struggling with? So we do make sure that there are other, I suppose, agencies involved and agencies that can interact. I think disconnections, we'll continue to monitor that. We wouldn't want to see an increase in it, but suppliers will see that as a tool in order to, I suppose, prompt people to engage. And we will continue to monitor to see exactly who and why people are being disconnected.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Deputy Smith. Deputy Farrell is next. Oh, apologies.
Data centre, please.
Oh yes, yeah, the data centre question. Mr. Gannon.
Thanks, Deputy Smith. We made genuine in every attempt to try to provide you with the information you sought. I think in our letter in September on the 16th, we noted at the transmission level that there were 8 data centres connected, and a further 8 have connection agreements in place but are not connected yet. So that would be 8 that are not yet connected but are in the pipeline, if I can put it that way. And then at distribution level, which would be ESB networks, there are 31 data centres connected, and then 8 that have connection agreements but are not yet connected. So that would be 8 at the transmission level plus 8 at the distribution level, so 16 in total.
The transmission level means they are connected?
Transmission
already.
level means they're connected at higher voltages, so with bigger wires. So EirGrid would deal with the larger wires at higher voltage. So it's just a different grouping of data centres who would use higher levels of energy in that group.
So the questions I've asked you, you'll come back properly with these in written format for me, because they may beg more questions. You know, so one thing often prompts the other. And in that question, I also asked if it changes the previous estimate by EirGrid of the power demand from data centres.
No, so it would not, in that EirGrid would have the existing data centres connected, and they would have their signed agreements with those data centres. They would have the contracted ramp, which is what the data centres may increase their usage by in that connection contract, and then EirGrid would predict how much the data centres might ramp within that or might increase their usage within that. So we will come back, and we will come back in writing. We're also happy to sit down and have a brief session on it as well to make sure you have the information you need.
I might do that actually. Because that's
fine.
Thanks very much.
Maybe it's just worth mentioning that we collect data for, let's say, the retail market monitoring from suppliers. So we have regular access on an ongoing basis to the same data all the time. So we're more comfortable with that. The questions you asked, we had to collect data on an ad hoc basis, basically from the system operators in line with the questions you asked. So it just, we're probably trying to understand what you were looking for and provide it. It's not information that we hold ourselves, but we would genuinely be happy to sit down with you. We know you're very interested in this, to try and understand what we can provide, what we can get from ESB Networks and EirGrid that will help.
Yeah, just my original question was September, so when can I expect the written answer?
Tomorrow we will follow up with an answer that collates the two and that perhaps notes what we mean by transmission connected and distribution connected, to highlight that they're two separate baskets of connections, if I can put it that way.
I look forward to that then, thank you.
No problem, Deputy, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that.